Well, hello, and thank you for joining PropTalk, a property management podcast powered by ResMan. I'm Elizabeth Francisco, the president here at ResMan, and I'm your host for today's podcast. Today's podcast is Myth or Reality? Are pets bad for business? I am delighted today to welcome our guest, Victoria Cowart, the Director of Education and Outreach at PetScreening. Like so many of us, Victoria spent most of her career in property management operations. Her years as an operator undoubtedly drove her interest in serving the apartment industry in a more meaningful way. Victoria has served in her local affiliate and held several key committee chair positions for the National Apartment Association, including chairing the legislative committee for the past 12 months. And I would consider myself a member of the Victoria fan club. So I just want to say, on behalf of everyone in the industry that I know and everyone and everything that you do, I just want to give you a big thank you for your service to our industry and all the great work you've done to raise money for PAC and awareness of issues facing the industry. It is a lot of hard work, and you do a fantastic job.
Thank you so much. It's not work if you're doing what you love. And this industry is filled with people so easy to love.
Wow.
So easy to love. And aspirational people like yourself. Bootstrapping a PMS as a woman, how long ago?
Yeah.
And raising funds for it? I'm going to knock off whoever's the president of your fan club.
Oh.
And take the CEO spot, the chief excitement officer, right from their hands.
Awesome.
So,
I love that title. I might have to consider that chief excitement officer.
I love that.
That
Please
is
snatch and use liberally.
Yes, I think I might.
That's good.
So I was going to say today, what we're going to be talking about, I'm so excited, is we're going to talk about how a more progressive approach to pet acceptance at your communities can really help increase the value of the asset. And I know that I'm hoping that our audience, as you guys listen to our conversations today, that we're going to give you some ammunition to go back to the boardroom, to your investors, and really make the case, because I believe, and from the data that I've seen, they're leaving money on the table.
Lots of money.
Yes, and that's how you get their attention.
Yes.
So, again, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And I was going to say, if you wouldn't mind just telling us just a little bit more about your career and how you got where you are today.
So I have to give a shout out to a gentleman who I appreciate to this day, Norman Nierenblatt. I was 18 years old, decided I wanted to be in this business. I love sales, needed a job, wanted to go to college, get out on my own. And I did all that with Norman's help. I went to Norman. I said, I'd like to work for you. I've heard good things from your employees about you and your organization. And can I have a job?
Mm-hmm.
He gave me the keys to the model. Said, go over, look at the model, come back and sell it to me.
Oh, my gosh.
I was 18 years old. I got those keys. I went to that model. Must have sold it well. He hired me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an amazing ride since then. I was a leasing agent for 4 properties for him and a different property every day of the week, working with wonderful women, 2 of whom remain great friends to this day, one of whom was in my wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So this industry just brings everything to your life. I've enjoyed a career managing apartment communities, and I'm going to give a shout out to the girls who do compliance and cocktails, because I manage Section 8 communities as well as conventional. I have a cocktail or 2 for them, by the way, if they want to call me.
All right, Janelle and Rue, you heard that.
I do. I have 2 that would really blow their socks off. So conventional apartments, subsidized apartments, mobile home communities, manufactured housing communities are 20% of the housing in South Carolina where I come from. And I think they're wonderful. They're an amazing opportunity as well for service in the property management field. And then HOAs for some real delightful fun. Manage those as well. And just came up in the industry and loving every aspect of it. We wear so many hats. You're just never bored.
No, amen to that. You just said something too, and we'll have to talk about that in more detail in another upcoming podcast teaser about coming up through the ranks. And I also had to do the tour of the apartment and sell it before I could get hired on. But I don't think either one of my kids who were in the business had to do that. I'm like, wow, I hadn't thought about that. So, yeah, that might be a good tip, because it does make a difference. You can learn an awful lot about someone's ability to sell, especially thinking on the spot.
Absolutely. And I think if you don't do that, at least have the site team, as a secondary interview for many, many years. I had any candidates who were going to go out on site in management, meet with the manager and take a look at the model and give feedback. Yeah. If they're not falling in love with that product and excited about it, moving on.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And fresh eyes makes a difference. Well, I am, again, so thrilled to have this conversation. I thought it would be nice to share just kind of how we came about to having this podcast today, because I was able to, shout out to NAA Apartmentalize. Love that conference. I personally grew from the education afforded to me through the associations, coming up through the ranks over the years. And so I still to this day like to go sit in the sessions. And I picked the one that was the session by your company, PetScreening, and the panel, because I've always thought we had so much opportunity when it came to how we manage and deal with pets in our apartment communities. So kudos to you guys. You did, your CEO did a fantastic job.
John did great with that. John Bradford and a panel of our wonderful clients did such an amazing job for Apartmentalize. I was there in that room and just really proud of them and the message that they brought and the numbers and the information.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's all about what works.
Yeah. It always makes me get excited when I think about, oh, man, I wish I still had a property. But then my next thought after that was, well, I wonder where we would rank today with our pet policies and how, pet friendly we would be. Mm-hmm. But then that immediately makes me think of the word friendly, which I know you have some strong feelings about and what that really means for the industry. So I wanted to share just a couple of stats really quick. The American Pets Products Association estimates that 90.5 million households own a pet, or 67% of all households. And in addition, 73% of millennials, who represent one of the largest renter demographics, own at least one pet. And I seem to recall at one point in 2020, occupancy at the animal shelters all across the country had reached a historic low, which then should beg the question, well, where did all those pets go?
COVID cuddling.
Oh, my gosh. You're so great with terms.
COVID cuddling.
I love how you put words together.
COVID cuddling. That's what that was. I'm home. I'm working for home. I need more cuddling.
I love that.
Those are all the COVID cuddle pets.
Yes. And the COVID cuddle pets. Try saying that 3 times while drinking and compliance and cocktails. But the COVID cuddling
Challenge
pets.
Accepted.
Well, where did they end up? They ended up in our apartment communities.
They sure did.
Yes. Whether you know it or not.
That was what I was. Oh, you took the words out of my mouth. Do you even know how many COVID cuddlers you have in your communities?
Probably not.
There we go again. COVID cuddlers in communities. We need cocktails and drinking games on those alliteration difficulties right there. Yeah, it's too early for that, but one day.
Yes. I love that phrase. Again, we might have to share that one. So a few more stats, and then I'm going to dive into some great questions, but things that I just was really, surprised to learn about. But the U.S. pet industry was worth about $99 billion in value at the end of 2020. So it's costly for those COVID cuddlers. Mm-hmm. I used it. And I feel confident that the numbers will be increasing at the year end for 2021. Also, 1 in 10 American pet owners are putting off having kids or having more children because of pets or maybe even pet expenses. I can tell you that I'm the proud grandparent of fur babies, and I think that's as far as I'm going to get for a while, to the point that I'm shamefully one of these people. I have bought, I don't even know what the word is, my grand fur babies presents. I don't even know what to think about that now that I just said that out loud.
We don't own a dog. We don't have a dog as a member of our family. I hate to use the word own. We don't even have a dog as a member of our family, but there's a dog toy by my door so I can play with my neighbor's dog.
Aw.
She's the best. We do have 3-pound kitties though, so I've done my part.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yes, I've done my part too with the kitty cats. So, and some more statistics. 45% of American pet owners spend the amount of money on their pets. They spend the same amount of money on their pets' health care as they do their own. And over the last 10 years, American pet spending has more than doubled. More than 50% of millennial pet owners buy their pets gifts at least once a month. This was the statistic I'm guilty of. You do well. You're buying gifts for pets you don't even have.
Truth.
Pet apparel is one of the fastest growing categories in pet e-commerce.
Categories. Did you get that pun?
Categories. Uh,
We're
it's
going
a
to
good
crack
thing.
up a lot today, y'all.
We are. This is a good thing we're not in cocktails and compliance because we would be having a rip-roaring good time right
We
now.
would.
The other thing that I thought was interesting is pet spend for dog walkers is projected to be a $1.5 billion industry in 2022.
With a B.
With a B. And that pet grooming is expected to reach $5.5 billion in value by 2025.
Another B, y'all. That's amazing.
That's a lot of money. And
before we go knee deep into the pets, can we just give a shout out to the owners, employers rather?
Mm-hmm.
So redo on that. Before we get into the pets conversation, I just want to give a little shout out to employers out there. Your largest group of employees is going to be your millennials.
Mm-hmm.
They're the largest group in the country. They're the largest group in housing. 73% of them have at least one pet, and we're having a hard time hiring. So I'm just going to throw this out there. The other day we were doing a video. Beautiful gal from a wonderful client named Lauren, giving her a shout out. Her little puppy was dressed for our video shoot. They were giving us, the clients were giving us love. We were shooting a video for PetScreening. Her puppy was dressed in the most adorable outfit, and she has spent $15,000 this year on that dog's care.
Yeah.
So this
Not
is her
surprised.
furry child. Just a little tidbit for the employers out there in the world. What about pet health insurance for your employees? Just saying, just throwing that out there.
I think that was a great provocative question to throw out there, because I think one of the things we can take away from all the stats that we just shared is that our way of thinking in the industry is way behind what's happening in e-commerce. And we see that even in some of the ways we interact from what I do. And we're trying to bring new solutions to market to align technology with e-commerce and people's online experiences. But I think the same thing has to be considered when you look at other aspects of apartment living. And I think pets is the number one area where we have probably the most opportunity. And, in thinking about creative ways to drive your ancillary revenue, like there's, out of the box thinking that we're going to talk about to really get the juices flowing and think about what can you monetize that you've never done before with regards to pets, because we are seeing the evidence is there that consumers will spend money on their pets.
Absolutely.
So, and if we can embrace that and make that part of the living environment, which again, in the apartment industry, we are basically positioning and selling homes. They're units sometimes to our investors, I feel, and to the general market. But man, if you've ever worked on site, you will realize really quickly, we work in people's homes.
We do.
And so we need to embrace that, and embracing that, same as we embrace their family, the furry family members count too.
Yes, they do. Very much.
Yep. So with the rise of pet ownership among our renters, and thanks to presentations like yours at NAA from PetScreening, I wonder how today's operators are thinking about their existing pet policies and whether they understand the opportunities before them. I know, it's been a hot minute since, I was in property management with our own assets back in 2015, but it seems like that we've had an uphill, when I was an operator, we still had an uphill battle in trying to get buy-in to changing or having a more open, pet-friendly pet policies. When I tried to explain that, or I tried to expand it, the obstacles were just sometimes insurmountable from our investors. And so my question would be, and I'm thinking about this, is do owners and operators still have the same apprehensions about pets in their communities? Do they have an accurate picture of the risk versus reward to their bottom line and asset valuation? And with so many questions, I could not think of anyone better to guide us through your pet, I don't want to say friendly, but your pet passionate.
Passionate.
That's right.
Going from pet friendly to pet passionate is where it's at, y'all.
Awesome. And so, going from pet friendly to pet passionate, and the impact on multifamily. So again, I want to say another big thank you for you joining us today, Victoria. And I want to jump right in and let's get to talking about this and have you help us understand this opportunity before us all.
My pleasure. And thank you for having me. This is amazing. Amazing studio. And I've seen the folks you've had on your podcast. I'm humbled to be here today.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, and that I just, in thinking about this, before we jump right into that, I'm just curious because you have been an operator for years. We won't say how many.
A few decades.
Because we're forever young. But I'm curious about how did you end up at PetScreening, and what drew you to that opportunity?
So it really was just a bundle of everything perfect coming together. My entry into the industry was founded on a love of sales.
Mm-hmm.
Showing, as I said earlier, showing that, taking a look at that model and going back and selling it to its own owner. Sales has always been a key for me. So coming up as a leasing agent was fabulous. Through my years as an operator, I learned I loved education, both
Mm-hmm.
receiving it. Shout out to NAA again, by the bucket loads from NAA. I loved receiving it, and I loved actually being a facilitator myself. I got the opportunity to teach at the Charleston Trident Association of Realtors. Shout out to them for about 7 years now, teaching property management licensing classes from them, or for them rather. So I enjoyed teaching those classes. And I learned very early on, I was also excited to delve into and serve in the areas of legislation and government. So when I learned of PetScreening and discussed this role with its founder and CEO, John Bradford, who is also was an operator and who also is a member of the North Carolina House of Representatives, it was like, bam.
Yeah.
All of it was there together. So, I was talking to an awesome entrepreneur, a member of the House, a kindred spirit. I mean, our first in-person meeting went like that, and it was 3 hours.
Oh,
So, I completely believed in what he was doing, his company, him, and the opportunity to really work joyfully in this role.
Yes. Well, you do, and you exude that.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised to hear that because his passion for his company and the mission is obvious, and it came through and when he was presenting at NAA.
Yeah.
So they're very lucky to have you too, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I also found an amazing packmate industry pro there whose face and personality and intellect I've always admired, Pat Patterson. So it's, when I got to meet her, really on these terms and speak to her and Mike Scheidel and John and David and present for them. My second discussion with them was, okay, give us a presentation. And we were all on Zoom together. It was so fun to do that it just felt completely perfect.
Wow. I wish I had been there to see it. I also wish I'd known you were in the market. Just saying.
Thank you for that.
So, we both have such a long history in the industry. And, I have over 25 years as an operator. And, when we were thinking and prepping for this session, our podcast today, I was thinking back to what our pet policies were, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about both my kids have been in the industry themselves and thinking about their assets and their pet policies. And, it seems like we've all been collectively, as operators and owners, stuck in the same pet restrictive policy for decades. So why are multifamily owners holding on to policies that do not work for today's renters?
First thought is because I was in the industry, as you said, and I remember being sort of, and mea culpa for this now, kind of proud of myself. I contacted our insurance broker and I said, send me all of the restricted breed lists you can give me from the various insurance companies that you work with, who you may bid us with in the future. And I gathered all that information together and culled that down into one list to ensure that my assets for that owner and our other owners and investors would always be covered no matter what insurance was out there that they would procure. I did not think for a moment that there was an option to go breed restriction free, to create that niche, which today you can literally create a niche for a struggling property, especially. You think of some of the B and C products that may have some functional obsolescence in the world. You want to up that ante, here's your niche. But I think it's, it's fear of insurance, how the insurance industry will react. I think it's, we do find it difficult in this industry to change. Change is very difficult. I've always said the only creature that likes change is a wet baby. That's just the truth. It's the only creature that likes it. We say we like it, but then we struggle with it. But I think we're also concerned about the accompanying behavioral concerns that people do have about barking pets, off-leash pets, pet waste. But we have tools for these things now. PetScreening is an amazing tool to help with your pet responsibility levels and your compliance levels. And there's others out there like Poo Prints. I always give Jay a shout out. If you have, poopertrators in your community, they're there for you. So you have to kind of take that fear off for a moment and say, why not? What are the obstacles? What are the solutions out there to overcome those obstacles?
Right.
And then, I'm just going to say, because these are all assets and investments, don't let them hold you back from the money.
Yeah.
Leap over those, solve those problems one at a time. You can extra pet waste stations, poop rinse, pet screening. You can solve all these problems. You can know the risks associated with each of the pets you're bringing into your community. With our FIDO scoring, you don't have to hold back from this anymore. Get to the money, people. There are solutions past your fears.
Well, it's funny. Talk about a great way to transition to another question, but you bring up the money, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, we're in the business of making profitable assets. And a lot of times that money goes right back into the assets, right. But you need to be able to meet your expenses and your financial goals. So as, apartment owners now, owners and operators have, if they haven't already, they're very shortly going to be finalizing their 2022 budgets, and they understand what their financial goals are going to be. And so I wonder, are there untapped revenue or retention opportunities that they should be considering as they strategize about, what's their plan going to be to meet or hopefully exceed their budgets for 2022? And because they haven't budgeted for them, now is a great opportunity to think about what else can you do that's going to give you that bandwidth and that extra capacity in your budgets, to make sure that the asset is profitable for next year.
Sure. And I think past your budget, completion time is a great time to have extra income dropped in your lap. You've already delivered your numbers. Look like a star.
Yes.
You've delivered your numbers. What else can you do on the income side to deliver more than you put out there?
Mm-hmm. So how would you go about? So what advice would you give about the monetary advantages? What's the opportunity before the property management, the on-site team and from the renter demographic?
So simply put, I have a tool, Revenue Fetcher Worksheet. And when you realize, first off,
Hold on. Did she just say Revenue Fetch?
I did.
Worksheet?
Revenue Fetcher Worksheet.
I love the company terminology.
I get to have puns. In that 3-hour conversation with John Bradford, I said, if I come to work for you, I see you sign your emails wolf regards. Can I sign my meow regards? Yeah. He said, you can sign your emails however you want.
Oh my gosh.
I said, okay, I'm sold. So, from a purely revenue standpoint, let's just talk dollars. When I work the Revenue Fetcher Worksheet and I ask a property, what do you charge now for pet rent? What do you charge now for pet fees at entry? And then I say to them, consider potentially having a range of pet rents and pet fees. Like you have a range for your apartments, like you have a range for your deposits based upon how your human applicants qualify. Consider a range based upon FIDO risk-based scoring. So instead of just a $10 a month pet rent, consider a range of 10 to 30 if you're at 10. If you're at 200, consider a range of 200 to 300, 200 to 400 on your pet fees at entry. It's equitable because it's based on risk when you work with us. And so every time I have run just those numbers, and this is just one area of revenue enhancement, each property I have run stands a chance of easily having an extra 30% pet revenue on the table. 30%, generally coming up at $20,000 or more. And at average cap rates, you're talking $300,000 boosts in your property values, in excess of $300,000.
Wow.
At even moderate cap rates. So there's more monthly money on the table. There's more money then to add to the NOI. There's more money to value the property. So this literally goes all the way from the top to the bottom as a revenue and value enhancement, just on that level alone.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'm not surprised to hear it, and I would love to understand more about the FIDO score and the risk assessment, and what kinds of things does it take into account in that risk assessment?
The risk assessment is fabulous because it gives companies who are forward-thinking, who want to get away from the breed restrictions, like I'll throw out H.H. Hunt. They're not even a client yet. So they're out there without breed restrictions. And so what we'll offer them the opportunity to do is still understand the risks associated with each pet and pet parent combination. It does take into account some degree of the breed, the weight, the age, whether it's been spayed or neutered. We know that does play a factor in behavior. It takes into account the health care given to the pet and the inclusion of that in the profile, the vaccination information, the vaccination documentation. It asks if the pet gets routine health care and about that health care provider. And then it goes on to ask 21 pet parenting and pet behavioral questions. And all of these, from the breed to the pet parenting questions, are churned through the algorithm and out pops a 1 to 5 FIDO score. Now, for our clients who aren't yet there or who are drawing back on their breed restrictions, maybe having less breed restrictions, but are not there breed restriction free, this is still customizable. Those that they say are not permitted due to pet breed or weight restrictions will get a 0 paw. Sad. But the others will go through the algorithm and they'll get a 1 to 5. So this is a great way to start tiptoeing as an industry, if we're not ready to just leap over, to tiptoe towards breed restriction free, weight restriction free. Some of the municipalities, and Widener learned this out in Seattle, I think it is, in the Seattle area, in the Kings County area. Some of the municipalities are saying you can't have breed restrictions. So in some areas, this is already being done by the municipalities, by the representatives there of the folks in that area. So some of the companies are learning these lessons, you know, behind the shield of it being done by the municipality and learning that they enjoy it and that their residents enjoy it. So there's all sorts of things on the spectrum out there right now with regard to pet restrictions, breed restrictions. But our FIDO scoring, no matter where you are on the spectrum, will give you a true risk assessment. It's the only thing of its kind out there that does.
Oh, yeah. I think that's fabulous. I mean, that is, I know that I can imagine, because I'm in technology, I can imagine the work that went into that. And I'm sure that you guys are getting some amazing data out of that and will continue to.
Yes.
So I would imagine that, you know, hopefully next year in NEA, we're going to get another update so we can understand. And, you know, data does clear up a lot of myths.
It does clear up a lot of myths.
Yes.
And I do have just a teaser, I do have an amazing panel discussion next year for Apartmentalize, and some of the most amazing participants from some of the most fabulous companies. So it's a legal beagles, attorneys and risk assessment folks, and myself. So I'm super excited. That's one of the first submissions I've personally worked on, aided incredibly by Denise from Equity, that got accepted from NAA. So, well,
congratulations. And I was in the front row. I will make a point to be there again because I want to be your unofficial champion, because I think this is long overdue in the industry. And this is why I'm so excited about it, because I pushed the envelope as far as I could back in my day. And trust me, the people came along kicking and screaming, but our assets, they outperform the market. So I didn't have the data yet, but I'm bought in 100% because I've seen it work. I'm guessing there's probably even more I could have done. So I probably left money on the table, which irks me at this moment, but
I did as well.
I did as well
until I started looking at the data.
Yeah.
You know, you have to really open yourself up to the data and the discussion. And until I began embracing the data and the discussion, I know I did as well.
Yeah.
I was just beginning to embrace pet rent.
Yeah.
You know, that's as a pet lover, you know, I found that hard initially, but it's not about our feelings.
No.
It's about delivering asset value enhancement. You know, when we all open our 401k information when it comes to us, we want it to have a bigger number than it had the quarter before.
Yep.
And our owners and investors want that too, and they deserve it. So we have to get past our feelings, get to the data, and, you know, the COVID cuddling and move forward from there.
Well, and there is a cost, albeit I believe that's one of the myths about having pets, and we'll get into that in a second, on your properties. But you're right, and explaining that and being upfront with your prospective renters is something I think when you take the time to make people understand the why, it's much easier to buy into. So I'm sure there's a good conversation there. And that makes me wonder, you know, as you guys have started rolling this out across the country and you have, you know, working with the number of clients that you do, is there any difference in revenue potential by asset class?
Absolutely. Well, everything that we talk about is different between the asset classes. The higher the asset, the higher the revenue dollars we're talking about generally. So if you're in a B or C asset class and you're talking about pet rents in the $10 to $30 a month, that's one set of numbers, and that's great. But an A that I'm hearing about across the country might be $30 to $70 and higher in certain areas. And of course, assuming the A is a stabilized A-class product with durable income, the cap rate will be lower than the cap rate on a B or C, and that means that those dollars are worth more, literally worth more. The same dollar's worth more,
right?
Because of that cap rate. So with the higher the asset class, the higher the income, and the greater the value punch for the product, you know, for that asset, with whatever you do, you know, and this, of course, is one of those things.
But that's not to say that B and C assets can't benefit as well from looking at revenue opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. It's just that cap rate gives you a little twist on the dollar being worth more. You know, when that cap rate is lower, each dollar is worth more money.
Right.
You know, on the asset valuation side. But the B and C products, you know, they're always struggling to maintain quality and market share. And the more pet passionate you become, the more market share you can ensure for your product. And revenue is revenue, y'all. $10 to $30 a month, having an opportunity on an average property of 250 units, no matter what asset class. When you go from flat to FIDO, you're talking 30% more pet revenue, easily $20,000 more a year. Every property needs that.
Every property needs that. You're exactly right. So what do you think, Victoria, are some of the biggest, I guess, misconceptions, right? We're talking about the myth, but what are the misconceptions about having pets, allowing pets at your property?
So, well, I won't say it's misconceptions because some of it's born of anecdotal, experiences. But I think sometimes in property management and in any industry, the negative impacts and factors in our day are the ones that are amplified. So, if you think about it for a moment, most folks who've been operators can remember that disastrous apartment with the worst smell and the worst damage ever. But you have to remember for a moment, whether you know it or not, 67% of your apartments all have pets or animals in them. So we have to include pets and assistance animals. So you're not really accounting for numerically the number of times households have moved out and there's been no damage.
Right, because we haven't had the data on it.
We haven't had the data. So I did some research on this recently. I have a whole session on going from pet friendly to pet passionate. And I just was pleased to give that to the American Apartment Owners Association. But this whole session, allowed me the opportunity to dive into this even further. And what I found is truly 9% of households that move out with pets are causing damage and leaving behind damage. 9%. Is that worth the market share that you gain by becoming pet passionate? Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, again, we all go back because we're all, property management people at heart. We're property managers at heart, most of us still to this day. We think about that worst apartment ever, and we're thinking in terms of dollars. Research revealed to me the average pet damage in that 9% when folks are moving out with a pet is under the amount of any pet fee or pet deposit you're taking at an average rate of $191 worth of damage.
Wow. Yeah. Well, there's a myth buster for you.
And you made a great point about this the other day about the flooring.
Yeah, about the fact, exactly. Because, where I was getting in my head going there is as you're talking about the pet damage, I think there's also, I'd love to see the data on which pets are causing the most damage. Because my own personal experience and why I advocated for lifting our breed restrictions is, unfortunately, personally, I've had tougher times and seen more damage from our smaller furry residents than I ever did the larger ones. In fact, I've only been bitten once in my entire career walking apartments, and it was by a chihuahua on the back of. I have a scar to this day on the back of my calf. He's sneaky. He'd wait till you tried to leave the apartment. But the larger dogs, were the ones that would come up in the office. They were great. People would bring them up and visit. And when it comes to the pet damage, the industry. Oh my gosh, decades we had carpet in everything but the kitchen, right? We had the vinyl or the tile flooring. Now that hard surfaces are so widely adopted in the industry, there's got to be an obvious, to me, it seems like there's an obvious impact to the amount of pet damage that can even happen because it's much easier to deal with a pet accident when you have hard surfaces.
Right. I'm sure there's a correlation there. The advancement of the hard flooring and the decrease of the pet damage. I'm absolutely certain you're correct on that. You were on the perfect path with that.
Yeah. So duly noted. If you have been holding back on making the change, which, I would say you're probably a little behind that curve there, but it's something you could definitely consider if you're looking to move to a more passionate property.
Absolutely.
Policy. Yep. Awesome. So I've read, there's several articles that you could read in a variety of content out there about the mental health benefits of pet ownership. And case in point, service animals, support animals, emotional support animals. So, and especially I'm thinking as the pandemic really took hold and people increased the amount of time spent in their apartments, that I would imagine led to why we saw the mass adoption. You said the COVID cuddlers, I think is quite accurate. But I would say everybody needs cuddling all times, at all points in the year, regardless of what's going on in the world.
Agreed.
So, from your perspective, do you guys ever, talk about, or are you hearing about any of the more, I would say, qualitative benefits of pet ownership within the resident profiles, or even for just the community as a whole, because it's moved from pet friendly to pet passionate?
Absolutely. There's so many areas in what we do at PetScreening where we hear about this. First, I want to give a shout out to our team of assistance animal reviewers and assistance animal authenticators. They are constantly, and our customer service folks are constantly interacting with assistance animal owners and folks who are making that reasonable accommodation request. When we realize one is passed on, we send a condolence card. These are just amazing, compassionate folks, and our legal team leads them. And they have, for those of you who have those jokes about the legal teams around, the legal team leads these folks, and everybody has such a heart. You walk around our office, and everyone either has an animal with them because they're allowed in their backyards because everybody has a yard that they work in, or you see pictures of them. So there's an amazing qualitative value, whether it's at work or at home. And to this conversation, pets are considered family by more than 90% of our residents. I think the number is 92%. I think 92 or 93%. So I'll go with 93. I think it was 92% of us in the business realize that pets are family. 93% of our residents believe that. And that includes people who don't have pets. Everyone realizes and recognizes the value even other people, if not they themselves, place in their furry family. These pets and assistance animal counterparts, 71% of our residents believe bring people together and create community. And what do we want in our communities? We want retention, because that drives additional value and income because you're not spending the money on those turns. So if the mass majority of people are telling you that these are family members and they create community, that's what we want. We want to welcome family and create community in this industry. So we just got to look at the numbers. One study showed the average length of stay. This is also blew my mind when I started doing the pet passion research. Again, this may not be everybody's experience, but one study revealed pet unfriendly communities have an average length of stay. Wait for the number. This will blow your mind. 18 months in pet unfriendly communities.
Okay.
Do you know what that number goes to in pet friendly communities?
Oh, no. But I'm sure you're going to tell me. What a teaser.
Wait for it. 46 months.
Wow.
Y'all do the math. That means in a pet passionate community, versus a non-pet passionate community, a pet unfriendly community is turning over their units 2.55 times more often.
And spending that much more money in a course of 3 to 5 years.
What they are losing in NOI and what they're draining off of that asset in value just to get past this mental block is amazing.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity just in that one statement there. It's funny. I think you're exactly right about how it does bring the community together. And, hopefully we have some people in our audience that were with us there at Sequoia back when we had our management company. And if they're listening, they'll know Bear. We had the most amazing long-haired shepherd at our property who's named Bear, and he became the property mascot by our own residents. And unfortunately, when Bear passed away, it brought the community together. It was really a beautiful thing to see. He was a very special animal and the most gentle giant you've ever seen. But we even had we made a memorial for him in our office.
Perfect.
And
wonderful.
The response from the existing community to support this lovely lady, Lisa, who lost her pet, because that was heartbreaking. And but people coming in as prospects made a note of that memorial. Almost everyone that came in the door. And they just thought that was so amazing and fantastic. And it made them, for those who were pet owners or had pets as part of their family, they felt like that was a place they could call home. And so
they knew immediately you got them. And they also had a kindred spirit in Lisa, Bear's pet mom. So, and where else is Lisa ever going to have an experience like that again?
Yeah.
I hope she had others, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
But that's amazing and lovely and touching. And every pet parent who walked in the door after that said, these people get me.
Yep.
These people will care about me.
Yeah.
And Wendy Dorchester is one of my favorite humans from Pegasus. Shout out to her. She said years and years ago, if they like you and their stuff fits, they'll rent from you. Yep. And I'll go you one better. Just, because Wendy gave me that kernel that I've carried with me forever. And I never have forgotten that wisdom. If they love you and if they know you love them, they'll stay.
Yep. It's the simple part. It's amazing to me how basic that concept is. But in my time traveling around the country and seeing different owners and operators and different mentalities, seems to be the one that we start with, but we lose sight of. And it's really that simple. These are, at the end of the day, it's not a car, it's not a pair of shoes. These are people's homes. And there's a peace of mind that we all want to have when we come home at the end of the day. And, I think anyone that's in the apartment industry is in such a we have just the most unique opportunity to enhance some aspect of someone's life. And by allowing pets is a great way to do that. And you'll be happy to know Lisa actually moved beyond the property and has been a Facebook friend of mine ever since.
Oh,
and I wasn't
wonderful.
even the property manager at the time, but they knew I happened to frequent that particular community, Courtney Manor, quite a bit. And became, I knew Bear too.
He sounds beautiful, and that's lovely to hear.
Yeah.
And again, people who walked in that office knew, you folks get me. You folks will care for me. Look how you cared for her. This is a place with a heart. I can call this home, not just my apartment.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, because we are in a business, if we bring it back to the business, I would imagine that those retention rates, what drives that would be, there is an upfront expense from residents who come in with pets. And if they're in a good environment, you're going to have an easier time as you look to, bring rents up to what's fair in the market when they've got the time and the money and the relationships invested in your community. And, people from outside the industry, it's one of the things I learned in raising money and just explaining what we do. There's so much a perception and a focus on net new leasing. And It's like, and while we have to focus on net new leasing, I think it's more aligned with your lease ups as the number one priority. For us, when we operated, it was always renewals.
Yeah. And I was fortunate to work for an owner who allowed us to put our money where our mouth was with that. Bonuses for renewals were higher than bonuses for new leases. And that was because we knew, and we said over here, retention. But were we literally paying homage to that effort that it takes to achieve that?
Yep.
So we paid higher dollars for renewals than we did for new leases because a renewal has more value than a new lease.
Amen.
Because it's not undergirded with all the expenses.
Yep, you're exactly right. And we did the same thing. So there's another tidbit for you guys. It's not pet related, but it really is. If you're not thinking about how you reward, it's as simple as you have a positive interaction or positive reward for the things you want repeated, right?
Yes.
And so you need to go down to the basics to think about that.
Yeah.
So we talked about, the great sense of community. But I'm curious about, we've talked about the pet owners, but what about residents who do not have pets in a community? Because I would imagine, and I feel like I've heard it at least anecdotally, there's concerns about, well, what about the people who don't have pets at the property, people who are uncomfortable being around pets or animals? What about them? Is that a fair concern?
So, aligning yourself with any of the concerns of any of your neighbors, your clients, your neighbors, your customers, is always fair and important. Numerically, do the pet fear residents have the numbers? No. Rationally, statistically, do we find that they align themselves with pet owners even when they're not? Yes. They agree they're part of the family. They agree they bring the community together. They certainly have the opportunity not to visit the dog park, the bark park or the dog run or the washing stations. They certainly have the opportunities not to visit those things or to participate in a yappy hour if they're concerned about that. So they can avoid the pet amenities and the pet activities. And they too still know that it brings community to the community. And that is something that everybody wants. So frankly, I don't believe that there is any realistic number of folks who believe they're going to live in a communal setting and avoid pets in that communal setting. I think that they are more receptive than most of us realize. I think their receptivity rate is much higher than we might realize. And what they really want is a pet responsible community. And with PetScreening and those 21 pet parenting questions and, asking those questions of both the assistance animal parent as well as the pet parent and doing that annually, we're reinforcing pet responsibility. I think most of our residents are not on the fear of pets and animals side as much as they are on the, I want a desirable pet responsible environment.
Right.
And we can help with that. And there's other providers who can help with that. Again, like I said, Poopatrators, Poo Prince, is out there waiting for you. So there are all sorts of things you can do to create pet responsibility in your community. As we said, their greatest concerns are pets being off leash, pet waste. So have sufficient number of waste stations, have your pet and animal policies, and ensure that your residents are following those, and have a way to track that. All of the animals in our database have an issues button. And if anyone's having issues, those poopatrators, those off-leash folks, you click that on their profile and you type in the issue on their profile and it will follow them. So what your residents want more often than not is not to avoid a fear of pets and animals. They want to embrace a pet responsible environment, and all the operators out there can achieve it.
Yeah. I think that was a great point, and it's a phrase that we need to embrace and talk about more, is a pet responsible environment. Because I think this is where there may be a revenue potential that we are not thinking about. Because when, I think we've tackled the poopatrators, which just love.
I love that.
The puns in your company.
That's from Poo Prince. I
stole
stole that liberally from Jay.
Shout out to Poo Prince. Yeah. But there's other aspects of pet behavior that can cause a disruption to other renters. And so I wonder if there's not an opportunity for us to look at, can we bring in, whether it's a rev share or it's something that you absorb the cost, that just really enhances and makes your community the one that is known in the area, is known online, the social reputation, as having the most pet responsible environment. And I think about what are the types of things that would cause those disruptions. So maybe if it's behavior, if it's barking, there's a, you can look on Netflix, you can look on any variety of streaming services about all of the shows, the reality shows that are focused around pets and pet behavior and pet training. So, is there an opportunity to bring in, pet classes at your property? Like if I had properties today, since we've been talking about this and prepping for our podcast, I've gone back in that headspace and I'm like, oh, I never had anything like that, but maybe now's the time that you think about that. So what are those types of behaviors, and can you work within the community, some local trainers and groomers and just, a variety of local businesses that will help your residents? And I'm willing to bet, because we love our pets, but when they're disruptive or we're struggling, because, a lot of people, okay, we'll just call it what it is. If you've watched any of those shows, 9 times out of 10, it is not a pet problem. It's a people problem.
It's a people problem.
So if we provide that opportunity to provide education and help them to train and have a better, pet relationship for themselves, then it benefits the community. So, I don't know if there's anything else that you were thinking about, but I would definitely be considering those if I had assets today.
I agree. Pet passion parades where you bring out the groomers, you bring out the wags, the rovers. And I think there's honestly an opportunity, and I had begun to explore this at one point. I think there's an opportunity to work with the animal shelters in your areas, because while the COVID cuddling emptied, many of the shelters, there is a potential for animals to be returned to the shelters.
Yeah, that's happening.
If the pet parent and pet cannot get together and have expected behaviors met. So many, I think, of the shelters out there around the country do offer training. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity for operators to partner with their shelters to ensure that these animals aren't returned to the shelter, or that new animals don't arrive at the shelter. So behavior training is certainly out there. And that is definitely one of the things. The biggest concerns that we have heard from residents statistically that the stats have revealed to us are barking, pet waste, and animals being allowed to run off leash. So this is a revenue opportunity. This is a community building opportunity. It is a point of management. We will have to do the task. But 68% of homes out there, whether we embrace them or not, have pets in them. And to juxtapose that, 27% have children.
Wow.
Is this going away?
No. No. And the fact, I have not heard that stat, but that one is surprising to me. And if we are really being honest with ourselves, then we can't buck the system. We are here to provide housing, and the people who want our housing have pets. And they have pet needs that we are, as an industry, I think we've probably been ignoring or trying to just avoid. And I say, kudos to you guys for bringing light to this conversation, because we can't do that, and we're doing a disservice.
We are, but I do want to give a shout out to another company that I know is really pet forward. They're a new partner for us, Christopher Todd Communities. They do build to rent, and they have pet doors in their homes, y'all, to let their pets out into their backyards.
Oh, wow.
So, H.H. Hunt, Jamin Harkness out of Atlanta did a lease up in Atlanta, breed restriction free, learned all sorts of valuable lessons he'd love to share, I'm sure. And he did that in under 3 months with no concessions.
Wow.
So there are companies out there. As an industry, have we gotten there yet? Have we made it over the hill? No. But there's some very forward-thinking folks out there that we think are positively perfect.
I would have to agree. Like I said, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great that's great information for people who are on the fence, because I think one of the things we talked about that was, I know it always tugged at my heartstrings, and anyone who knows me knows I'm the biggest mush pudding out there, but I always struggled with the fact that when somebody is having to move, the number of people that would come through and just the ache and the heartache at the idea of having to give up their pet is just heartbreaking, because they are members of our family. And for any of it, all of us, and it's funny, a lot of people making these policies in the past that I had interactions with had pets themselves.
Yes. And
it's like, so shame on us. This is something that there is a way to work positively with it, to benefit the community, to alleviate the concerns. And I'm super stoked to see this happen for us as an industry and to keep moving forward.
We are too.
And one of the things I was thinking about, and there's two talking points I want to get to before we wrap up, and one of them is just talking about the scoring models as far as reputation management and review sites. When you're looking at a property and you're considering where you want to live, there's different things you could look at, and one of them might be the walkability score. And so I wonder, is there any conversations happening about your pet passionate score? Like, if I'm looking for a property for myself and my furry children, if you will, my fur babies, how do I know which communities are going to be the best fit for me? How do I know who's being more pet responsible and has a pet responsible environment? Have you heard any conversations about like pet scoring for apartment communities?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that, because one of my brilliant pack mates, Pat, brought this conversation to the fore at a development meeting. So, but first I want to draw back for just a second. There's a dichotomy of opinions out there. 70+% of us operators believe we're pet friendly, but 70+% of those seeking apartment homes believe pet friendly communities are hard to find. How can those two things be true?
Right.
So we're obviously missing the mark.
Yeah.
We believe we're pet passionate overwhelmingly. They believe overwhelmingly that those of us who are pet passionate are hard to find. So there's obviously a disconnect there. So, but funny you should ask that again. Pat mentioned that, and we were talking about that. And I think that there's a future for that. I don't know who's going to bring that to the fore and how. But obviously, I would suggest the number of breed restrictions, if any, would factor into the score. The pet weight restriction, if any, would factor into the score. Some owners, still have age restrictions because they're worried about the training period. It's impossible, I think, to get around, but you have those. And then I think also, too, there's an opportunity to advance your score with pet amenities, those bark parks, those runs, those pet wash stations, your pet activities. Do you have yappy hours? Do you have pet passion parades? I think that all of that would factor into your score, and I think that would be super fun for folks to be able to see. And I would love to see our industry competing for those scores.
Yes.
That's the key, because 70+% of these pet passionate owners are having a hard time finding a home. So if they had that scoring available, that would be great. They would know. Yeah.
We definitely have to move beyond the accepts pets as a criteria for looking and choosing, as you're searching for your apartment home. And so I would say maybe in the meantime, got a hair there. I would say in the meantime, if you're a property owner whether you have a portfolio or an individual owner, maybe one of the things you start with is making your own scoring model, if you will, and how you're, for your company, and then your individual assets can, see how they stack up and then promote it. Because if you've got all of those things, to me, that could be a 5-paw.
She did it.
I'm trying to think. It's a 5-paw star. What would you say?
5-paw policy.
Yeah.
And
or like pet friendly. Like think more about like the scoring. Like if I'm looking at my property, something about seeing those 5 stars on the website or 5 paws on a website. that would be a strong indicator.
Yeah.
I would think.
I think that would be a very strong indicator. You'd have to have folks being really willing and brave to put their PAW score on their websites. But I would love to see that, if they were willing to do it. I don't know that it would be something you'd do without the cooperation.
Right.
But I think companies could do wonderfully by beginning with their surveying. So many companies have in this industry gotten really good with folks out there like Satisfax, give them a shout out, at surveying their residents and their satisfaction levels. Ask your residents how pet friendly you are.
Yeah.
Ask them what you're missing. They'll tell you.
Yeah.
They're the perfect people to tell you. They said yes to the address.
Yes.
So ask them.
Yes. And kudos for you pointing that out, because we make a lot of assumptions. And at the end of the day, all you really need to do is ask. And then you consumers and customers, our renters they'll tell you what you need to do, what they need to justify the value as you increase value and increase rents on the assets. They will give you the tools to get there if you just ask them.
Absolutely. Asking your residents is amazing. Again, they already said yes to the address. They've already bought in. They're your people.
Yeah. You just got to keep them.
Ask them what they need. That's perfect. Yes. Perfect. You just got to keep them. Thank you.
So it wouldn't be a conversation about pet policies and pets in our industry if we didn't bring it back around and talk about, pet support animals and service animals, because I think there's a lot of people who think they understand the difference or how they should be interacting with it. I'd also say there's a lot of people in the industry, just from me seeing in the session, that don't really understand and are still uncertain about what they should or shouldn't be doing, what are options out there. There's a lot of talk about the abuse of different policies. So I thought maybe you could help us with your expertise. Just, give us some highlights about, that topic in general.
Sure. And I do want to give NAA a shout out. A couple of years back on the legislative committee, I was part of a working group that wrote an emotional support animal toolkit. And that really helped me understand this was a passion of mine. And I have continued with that. And so far recently as looking at HUD's FHEO 2020-01 notice from last year, most folks I talk to when I say that, HUD notice, many folks in the conventional business side of the business don't understand what I mean when I say a HUD notice. Others who do understand what it means roll their eyes back in their head because it came out right before COVID. Took our entire bandwidth to try to struggle through, what we needed to do last year for our teams and for our residents.
Right.
So, I have looked at that, and I offer free complimentary sessions to companies and associations about, the furry task of fair housing. And really quickly, I'll just say overarching, they are called assistance animals. They're called assistance animals. And there's a service animal and a support animal. And what you do with each of those, especially now given that HUD FHEO 2020-01 notice, is very different. The service animal side is very narrow, what we as operators can do and how we can interact with the client who says, I'm disabled and I'm requesting a reasonable accommodation for my disability. I have a service animal. That's a very narrow field of what you can do there. Don't hurt the messenger. It's in that notice. It's hard to understand these things sometimes and hard to want to look for them, but you do. On the other side, on the support side, that side is still what most folks are accustomed to, where you do get to look at documentation. We have a team, though, at PetScreening that will do all of this for our clients, and our services are free to the property management companies.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
We never invoice our companies. We don't require contracts. It's the pet parent that pays a tiny fee for a pet profile. The no pet households pay nothing. The assistance animal households, of course, pay nothing. So on just the pet parents, with a nominal fee upfront and annually, we're able to do all of our work. But on the assistance animal side, folks have to know what they're looking for in that documentation. So when the on-site teams say, that's great, we're here to support you, we need documentation for that, you're going to get a variety of responses. And if you don't have the expertise to know how to respond to those, it's difficult. Folks will whip out that card from the internet, that certificate from the internet. Others will hand you something from their healthcare provider. Others are handing you a letter from a healthcare provider that's not even theirs. They've doctored to make it look like it's theirs. We had one of those the other day, and I know about this because a client sent it to me and said, thank you, we're so impressed with the services, because when our team of assistance animal authenticators contacted the healthcare provider to authenticate the document at the end of the review process, they found out that letter was written for another person.
Oh, wow.
So this is a wide area, and it's a difficult area, and it's thick with Fair Housing Amendments Act, as well as HUD regulations. We went from 2013 to 2020 before we heard from HUD again. This is 60% of their complaints, and we went 7 years without hearing. So there's a lot more in that HUD notice than I think a lot of folks realize. And there's a lot of great parts in there for us, too, as an industry. So, there's more than we can cover here. So I would encourage folks, let me know if you want a presentation to your teams to help make them more confident and graceful and comfortable doing this themselves. Even if you're not hiring us, we want you to be graceful and confident with this. For your associations, Victoria at PetScreening.com. I'm already scheduling association sessions. Again, they're free of charge. Shout out to Bay Area Apartment Association. They're already on my calendar for next year, and Russ and Kimberly down there. So this is big for this particular conversation, but there's different pathways. HUD has spoken on this recently. We're happy to educate on this. And we have a whole team of assistance animal reviewers and authenticators and a legal team ready for you at no charge.
Yeah. And I love the idea of taking that off of the property because people can accidentally walk off a cliff and say things that they, just out of a lack of knowledge. So knowledge, is power, but, there's a lot to learn, and sometimes it's changing and it's hard to understand. So I think, that's fantastic. And I would encourage anyone that is considering, I think if you're going to have a pet passionate property, I think this is an important aspect of it that, as an industry, we could all learn from.
Absolutely. And whether or not you're pet passionate, that's where I think the industry has come forward on these breed restrictions, because regardless of your pet passion level, you cannot reject an assistance animal accommodation request based upon the breed or size of the animal included in that request. You cannot. So these breeds are already in your communities. Those who want them as pets are upset when they see others walking them and they can't have them. And they don't realize their assistance animal accommodations that have been made either in the service or support side. So this is important, whether you're pet passionate or not. Understanding the fair housing side of this, everyone has to walk this walk.
Yes. Well, I just have to say thank you again. You have provided so much great information today. Hopefully you can tell how excited I am about it.
I can. It's so fun to be here with you. Thank you.
I know, and that's, like I said, I always find that when I want to put that hat back on, and it's like, oh man, I wish I had some properties, because I think it's a good time to be in the industry. I think as hard as the last 2 years have been, so many wonderful lessons have come out of it. And I think some refocus on some really important things. First and foremost being the people in the industry. We've always been essential. I don't even know that we as an industry really recognize just how essential we were in our frontline team members. So, this has been just an incredible couple of years in the lessons learned. And part of that is pets and people's, the health that comes with it, the qualitative aspect of having a pet passionate community. I think it's a wonderful thing. So I think your company's amazing. So I won't try to steal her.
On behalf of John Bradford, I'm going to say thank you. And his whole team. He's got amazing people there who are there from the start, like Marge and Pat, and Mike, who's come on board. I think Mike just had his 1-year anniversary. He's our VP of sales. We've got amazing folks. This is amazing work they're doing. It's joyful to do it with them. I have like a perma smile. It's giving me more wrinkles, but it's okay. It's worth the trade-off.
Hey, smile lines. That's a good scar to have, is the smile lines.
It is. I agree.
Well, thank you so much again for joining us for our Prop Talk today. I've loved hearing all of your perspectives. So if you would like to learn more about ResMan or PetScreening, please visit our websites and social media pages, which will be linked in the description of this episode. And for more information and multifamily news and insights, be sure to subscribe to Prop Talk on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.